We're going to talk about the top 10 rookies in fantasy scoring from week 10. We're going to give you the confirmation bias you need on these rookies. We're going to talk a little dynasty. We're going to talk about the waiver wire a little bit on some of these guys that need to be picked up. And we're going to talk some ball. But what you really need to do right now is click that subscribe button. Tap it with your finger on your phone. Click it with the mouse on the computer. We cover the waiver wire extensively every day. We help you set the lineups. We talk dynasty. We talk rookies. We go deep in this fantasy football stuff. Plus, Ric Flair's watching you. Anderson Silva's watching you. Don't make them upset. Click that button. Stop missing out. Let's roll and talk some rookies. And our top rookie from week 10 is Jahmyr Gibbs with 26.2 PPR fantasy points. And everybody was wondering what the workload was going to be with David Montgomery back. And it was pretty splits, pretty close to even here. And Jahmyr Gibbs got his. He got his licks in, and he took advantage of it with 17 touches and 112 yards from scrimmage. And he was productive. He was electric, and that's what we should expect from Jahmyr Gibbs. They got two very good running backs here. They can use them in different ways. Dynasty, the price tag is through the roof. Same thing in redraft. You're enjoying the production here. 57.6% opportunity share and 5 targets. The fact that he's being used in the passing game and in the run game to a good extent is very encouraging. And I think no one's going to argue about Jahmyr Gibbs because he's a damn good running back. Jaden Reed popped off with 19.4 PPR fantasy points. People have a lot of questions about him because I'm catching that in the comments because he was one of the top scorers at wide receiver last week. 5 targets and a 13.5% target share. And that's what you expect from these Packers wide receivers when it comes to target share. They're usually in the teens. Maybe one hits the 20s. They take turns being the guy for the week. Then the next wide receiver is mid. Then the other one doesn't hit. And they all just take their turns. Jaden Reed is a good wide receiver. Broke out with 2 different collegiate programs. Second round pick. Has the draft capital that helps him out with the metrics. Really projects well for the NFL level. Plays in the slot well. And then also gets the air yards with a 12 ADOT. And he's been stretching the field a little bit from the slot off and on throughout the season. Getting a lot of workload. Again, he's a little bit up and down. You see his last 4 games here. 11, 12. 7, 19 in the fantasy scoring department. He's running a lot of routes. He's getting opportunities. And he's a lottery ticket every week because he could score you a bunch of points or he can lay an egg. But the thing is, he's getting opportunities and it could be his week on any given week. So that's the type of player you're looking at with Jaden Reed. Same thing with Dubs. Same thing with Watson. They all take their turns. And Jaden Reed is a very good rookie wide receiver. CJ Stroud is not just a good rookie quarterback. He's one of the best quarterbacks in all of football right now. He has been slinging dimes all year long. And it continues. And it's probably going to continue throughout the season. 66.7% of his pass attempts were catchable. Scored 19 fantasy points. 466 air yards. He slings it deep with accuracy. That's a good thing. This helps these wide receivers. One thing to note about these wide receivers, it does not matter who's out there running the routes. It could be a fat, bald guy for all I care. He's going to target them. He doesn't care. If you're open, it does not matter. It does not matter the number on your jersey, the name on your jersey. If you're out there running routes, he'll look your way. We know this by looking at the box scores because different wide receivers are hitting. They're up and down, and that's a good thing to see for a young quarterback like this. CJ Stroud is on the come up, one of the top quarterbacks in all of football right now, and one of the top assets in all of Dynasty too. 11.9 ADOT last week, and we just keep getting in these matchups where he scores fantasy points. He's going to be a long-term asset for the Texans, and he's a guy that you really want to hitch your wagon to. Now we're talking Tank Dell here, and he's paired with CJ Stroud. CJ Stroud loves him some Tank Dell. He wanted him in the draft. He got him in the draft, and now they're paired together. Tank Dell is a fascinating wide receiver because everyone pegged him as a slot receiver. He's more like a slot receiver plus, where He really should be in the slot a lot, but you can put him on the outside. The Texans do put him on the outside. He's actually on the outside a little bit more than where he is at in the slot per the metrics here. And he can do that because he's a very nuanced route runner, can create separation, has a lot of wiggle and a lot of juice off the step here. Good hands, and he's a very technical player, which allows him to transition well to the NFL game. Last week, 14 targets and a 35.9% target share. Elite work rate right there. 18.9 PPR fantasy points. 182 air yards in this game. He was getting deep targets and he ran 40 routes. Getting all kinds of opportunity. One, these Texans are in shootouts. They are giving CJ Stroud the opportunity to sling the ball downfield. They don't care. They are letting him develop. We've talked about this all year long, which is great for these wide receivers. These wide receivers have been taking turns, giving you that top-tier production, and Dell has really come on these last 2 weeks. He came on earlier in the season, then he got that concussion, then that ramp-up time, and then he started hitting. Tank Dell is climbing up the rankings in Dynasty, climbing up in value. Soon, he's going to be a hard guy to get. And then after that, in redraft, everybody's been wanting him off the waiver wire. And he's a guy you just play with in the lineups with your matchups. Bejon Robinson got that opportunity in Week 10. 17.6 PPR fantasy points, 23 touches. And we predicted this. We saw Arizona on the schedule, and we knew Arthur Smith was taking some heat. We knew he was going to look at this matchup and notice that everybody runs on the Cardinals, unless you're throwing it on them. But everybody runs on the Cardinals. They give up fantasy points to running backs. That's what they did to Bejon Robinson. They let him run the rock. They let him get some opportunities here. And he got you 17.6 PPR fantasy points. And that's what we want to see from Bejon Robinson. We want to see him with a high work rate. We want to see this be consistent. We can't trust it for the long term, at least for the rest of this year. But let's see what happens. Again, he's a stud player, alpha running back, still considered a generational talent. We just like to see him with more touches per game. Dalton Kincaid has been a breath of fresh air. We were on to him in the preseason, in training camp, talking him up. Took some weeks for him to hit because Dawson Knox was siphoning a lot of the workload, but now he's starting to be a consistent asset here. Last 3 weeks, 17 fantasy points, 16 fantasy points, 16 fantasy points in Week 10 against Denver, 16.1, 6 targets and a 24% target share. If a tight end's getting over a 20% target share, he's a guy that needs to be rostered and locked in concrete, because that is an alpha workload for a tight end, and he's getting that as a rookie. We're getting a few tight ends hit as rookies this year, which is a good thing, and is also rare that you get multiple rookie tight ends hit like this. This is a special tight end class. We'll probably have even more tight ends start to hit next year as well, because this tight end class was deep. Dalton Cade was drafted in the first round for a reason, was one of the top tight ends in college football in targets last year for a reason. Good pass-catching tight end. Glad he's starting to hit for us in fantasy football. DeMario Douglas, not a heavy hitter, but he's getting the workload. 14.4 PPR fantasy points after scoring a 10 spot the week prior. 9 targets and a 34.6% target share. Elite work rate. Not getting the air yards we want. 61 air yards on 9 targets isn't that great. However, he's getting the volume, and if he crosses the goal line, he's going to have a big week. You're getting 7, 8, 9, 10 targets a game. You're going to score some fantasy points. Might be up and down due to the nature of this offense, and we're seeing that here. 11 fantasy points in Week 7, 7 in Week 8, 10 in Week 9, 14 in Week 10. So he's not hitting elite numbers in fantasy production. He does have a downside here, but still, getting a wide receiver here off the waiver wire for free at this production clip, that's just money. In Dynasty, cheap asset to get because he's on the Patriots, doesn't have much draft capital to his name, but still, you got some production here for the short term at least. Keaton Mitchell, everybody loves him, unless you hate the touches here. Had 4 touches last week, but got you 13.6 PPR fantasy points. I don't know why the percent side's there. I jacked that up. But he has been a breath of fresh air as well. That speed kills. And if that defense lays down in front of him, if they miss an assignment on any given play, he can house it. He's already proven that, and he's going to prove it again if that consistently happens, and he's going to earn more touches going forward. You don't blow up like this initially and do not earn more touches and opportunities. That's just something you don't do. He's worked into the mix, and his work into this mix is only going to get bigger, especially in those plus matchups, and that's going to allow for him to eat a little bit. Right now in fantasy, week to week, he's a lottery ticket because there are going to be some down games. He's sharing the workload, but there's going to be up games as well because he's got that speed where he can be a home run hitter, and that's my take. He's a lottery ticket from week to week, not just a lottery ticket stash anymore. He's a lottery ticket lineup setter from week to week. He might bust on you here and there, but he also might hit on you here and there as well, as we've already seen it. So Keaton Mitchell is on the rise. Tommy DeVito here. And I just think Tommy Gunn from Rocky 5. And that's really all I got to say here. In fantasy football, no one's starting him with confidence unless you're really busted up in a 2QB league. But still, 13.5 PPR fantasy points, like QB3 numbers. 65.2% of his balls were catchable, operating out of a clean pocket on 59.3% of his dropbacks, and this was a nasty game. This game script allowed for him to just sling it all over the place because they were down. They're probably going to be down in a lot of games. I don't expect him to be fantasy relevant. He might have his day in the sun, and I hope he does. I hope the young guy does. However, we know what Tommy DeVito is, and it's not a long-term fantasy asset or even a fantasy asset. But we gotta talk about the rookie. Now we're looking at Quinton Johnson getting more opportunities throughout the weeks here. And the back end of the season might get interesting. 13.4 PPR fantasy points. 4 targets, though, just a 10% target share. However, ran more routes. 35 routes and an 85.4% route participation rate. His highest on the season. 84.7% of the snaps. Highest of the season, just 25 air yards. I really want those air yards to increase. I know it's just 4 targets, but he's a boundary wide receiver. He's better on the deep ball, on his contested catches. I would like to see him get some deeper routes. I think that could help him out immensely in fantasy production. I think that plays better into his skill set. On top of that, though, we're seeing the routes ramp up. We're seeing the snaps ramp up. We're starting to see some production out of him. Last 4 games, week 7, 3 fantasy points. Week 8, 10. Week 9, 3.6. Week 10 last week, 13.4. So we're getting some volatile production here. So we might have a hitter down the line on the back end of the season here as we get hot and heavy. Remember, first round rookie, volatile up and down prospect here. His prospect profile says he can go either way. He can go to the moon or he can just go to the trash. And we're hoping he goes to the moon. That's why he's a lottery ticket. We are seeing some good stuff right now. We want to hold true with that. I think if you need a lottery ticket, a wide receiver in redraft, perfect guy to get right now. In Dynasty, you spend a first-round rookie draft pick on him. That value is slipping through your fingers, and you really hope you recapture that here in the back 9 of the season, which you might. Be patient with him, and he could go either way. I'm not going to lie on you. I'm not going to lie. My strategy with him going into the season in rookie drafts was I was going to pass a little bit on him, maybe get a little bit of him in some drafts, just a small bit on my portfolio, but really buy on the cheap if he had a slow start. So I might be looking to buy on the cheap. Really depends on the deals, but still, Quinton Johnson is a volatile player, but a big-time lottery ticket going forward for the rest of the season. Here are the rest of the rookie players, except for Tajay Spears, who scored 10 fantasy points or more. I'm going to talk about Tajay Spears first. He's running a lot of snaps. He's getting some opportunities. Scored 10 PPR fantasy points. He's not pictured, not listed, but I just remember him off the top of the dome. But he's getting work rate. And really, if something happens to Derrick Henry, his value's going through the roof. He's just a stash right now in redraft. A guy you're holding in Dynasty. Might be involved in some trades, but never a key piece right now at the moment. Now looking down the list here, Zay Flowers, getting targets, getting opportunities, and he's usually scoring in this range, about 10 to 13 fantasy points. You feel pretty safe with that because he's getting those short targets. He's getting some opportunities with volume, but still, we need him to hit on the upside a little bit more. That's kind of the nature of the offense, though. A.T. Perry showed up. Michael Thomas is hurt. He's a big get off the waiver wire for some folks now, and a rookie draft pick in the later rounds of rookie drafts who a lot of people like. Had some good market share production coming out of college, and is a guy we're watching from week to week. Michael Mayer is flashing a little bit when it comes to targets and production. A guy you need to pay attention to. I look for him to hit a little bit more next year, and he might have his moments this year, but with Aiden O'Connell in, it could be up and down for the rest of the season, or he might start getting more volume. You need to pay attention to Michael Mayer nonetheless. Jordan Addison, 10.9 PPR fantasy points. Dobbs is in there. We're lucky to get double digits right now considering what's going on with quarterback. Justin Jefferson's going to be back. That might lighten up the load. That might expedite things too in the offense. Want to pay attention to that, but Jordan Addison's that dog. He's got that dog in him. He's got that upside. Can't wait to see what he's going to do for the rest of his career. Zach Charbonnet is stealing snaps from Kenneth Walker. Out-snapped him in the last 3 weeks. Scored 10.2 PPR fantasy points. We're watching the snaps. We're watching the workload. Kenneth Walker's also getting a lot of workload here in terms of share. But still, Zach Charbonnet is starting to show up here in the back half of the season. Not immensely yet, but in games where Seattle has to throw the ball a lot, he's out there on the field. Pass protection, running routes. He runs about 22 routes per game, getting those opportunities. But he's only getting 2.7 targets per game. So the opportunity in the pass game isn't really there for fantasy outside of him running a lot of routes. However, if it's a matchup where the wide receivers are locked down, they got to check it down a lot. He could have a big matchup. And plus, it's always good when your rookie running back is on the field a lot when you have a very good incumbent running back there already on the field who's very explosive and is already considered one of the top running backs in the league. But those are the top rookies from week 10. We talked dynasty, we talked redraft, we talked waiver wire, we talked about these rookies extensively. Now all you need to do is hit that subscribe button. Ric Flair's back there watching you. Don't miss out. I want to thank you for watching. Catch you on the next video.